important in terms of the foundation that we have based the methodology of ISA as a means of practicing, and it actually supports multiple frameworks. So the ISA 5 pillars, though it's available on YouTube, some of the notes I could cross-refer to some of our ex-speakers and make it possible for all of us to share today. The first part of the presentation is more of an introduction to ISA, what it is, how it got involved, who are the members, how do they go ahead with their methodology, training and certifications, how important they are in terms of the practicing community, how close they are towards multiple business needs, quality, human dynamics and so on. And the second part is on an analogy to understand business much better than most of us technologists can do today. I will share with you a paradigm where we will be looking at an analogy to understand business, whether it's a vertical in the manufacturing or it is in telecommunication or high-tech. It will have more impact in terms of you being able to perceive where technology stands for achieving the business needs. That will be the major part of our presentation today. About 30 minutes I have addressed for that. The last part of our presentation, we will definitely look at how you could be a part of ISA Global in the chapter, how you can contribute, what will be about logistics in terms of how to share each one of our knowledge across the community. And mind you, today in India alone, the ISA chapter is nearing a 4-figure mark, 1,000, which was about 600, about 4 or 5 months back. And with more of these webinars and knowledge share sessions, more and more people who are practicing have come forward and being a part of the ISA community. And we have had successful seminars and webinars in the past 2-3 months now. And also in terms of how you can be a part of the future roadmap where ISA India chapter will be taking forward. So to begin with, let us understand where ISA comes from, what is its foundation, how is it based on. And before that, I think a little bit of introduction into what it is. Is it a community center or is it a business? So let's have a look at what is ISA, which is a global association, primarily non-profit, and was founded by Mr. Paul Percept, who is actually visiting us in December. One of the first seminars on Architect Core is being held in Bangalore in December 15th to December 19th. And also it will be a kickoff session for the Indian chapter's full-fledged operations. This was founded by him in Texas, USA, and they have their global center as well as Austin chapter based out of that. And the mission was to make technology architecture more stable. That was the beginning of it, and it should be appreciated that at most of these forums that we get involved, we are centric towards technology. So of late, how does technology really contribute towards the business has impacted our profession in the world as a technology architect. So the mission encompasses some of the directives, objectives, which will make a technology architect more stable through understanding business. And that's what I can tell you with reference to the mission that ISA has. Unlike other forums where you find much of the training certifications ongoing today in the world, we are run by architects. Those who are practicing, those who practiced have taken some kind of a mission to actually educate others, and it is meant for the technology architects and is also very useful for business architects as well. It is centrally gone, based out of Austin, Texas, US, and it is locally run in terms of the geography. So we have chapters in each of the geographies such as the Europe, Asia Pacific, now India, China, Australia. Sydney chapter started quite recently. We had Germany chapter kicking off about a week back. So we have a presence which gives a local blend, a local feel of what we are looking at, but with a global knowledge. And it's very agnostic to technology. ISA doesn't promote any of the technologies, frameworks, or any of those things, be it Microsoft, be it IBM centricity, be it open source. And it's definitely vendor agnostic in terms of the suppliers within the software and information technology frameworks. So I just told you in terms of our presence in ISA, has predominantly started in US, in the East Coast, and then now spread out to the West Coast as well. Has made some presence today in South Americas as well. The presence of European chapters has grown tremendously in the past 3-4 years. And we have the China China coming up next after the South Americas. The Sydney chapter and the Melbourne chapter started quite recently. And we have the India chapter, which is kicking off, though it was present in the past few years, the activities were quite limited, and a more focused approach was taken to ensure that the IT hub definitely gets the benefit of the ISA global knowledge. So we have the architects and executives coming out of these chapters. There are about 35 chapters today, and a network of around 80,000 people as of today in 60 countries. And that's a huge distributed organization. Every day there will be one webinar or an event or a certification or a training which is going on globally, and most of this information is available in the library in terms of sharing between the members of ISA, and the chapters will enable communication of this information to the respective members. So primarily components of ISA or the community. It's the community, it is actually network, it is the network of architects, it is actually sharing the best practices amongst the members, and also mentoring amongst the group of people who are working today at different roles, levels across organizations to adopt today methodology for best value delivery. Alongside the community, the most important aspect has been two, the research and education. Educating people in terms of the skills, the experience, and training and certification globally. And it's been recognized quite significantly in the last 5 to 6 years, starting from 2006, when Microsoft opted to stop their Microsoft certification and rely on the ISA certification CETA. From then we have grown tremendously in terms of acceptability, and education is more of a continuing exercise here, unlike in other forums where you will find there is a kind of training, and beyond that you get a certificate and you are left alone in the world to actually do the practicing. It's not so much here. It's more of, once you're an ISA member, you continually get the updates, just like doctors do in the medicine field, in terms of the architecture principles, the best practices, case studies, tools, and a library of components that you can use for architectural design as well. More of it I will tell you a little bit later. So it is not just education in terms of once meet and then let it go. It's more in terms of a continuous handhold. And ISA also gets to benefit from the members who go across multiple practices and come back and then reposition their knowledge into the ISA framework. More of that will be in the next couple of slides when I speak about the IT block and the 5 pillars of ISA. Research through partnerships and innovations has been slowly progressing of late, and the outreach because of that has gone into a recognition of involvement in definition of standard practices, frameworks, and some of the standards that the industry has to take care, and awareness of architecture as a profession, and that has really helped the enterprise architecture. Enterprise architecture may be a misnomer here. It's more of maybe at solution level or technology level, individual infrastructure, information level, one can get benefits in terms of both the research and education for the community. Now, as we go forward, we will try to define what enterprise architecture is according to what we feel and what the industry feels about it. But the whole organization is made up of members who are from different fields. They are from academic universities as well. They are from government. They are actually coming from vendors and service agents. And there are employers who are contributing towards the ISA support as well as the corporate members. So the professional body basically revolves around these 5 pillars. And we are yet to progress much in academia. In the last 2-3 years, we have had very good progress in terms of inculcating some of the content of ISA architecture into courses in both bachelor's and master's. And we are trying to do that as well as in India. Some of the prominent universities in South India have shown some interest, especially in terms of masters and the masters of technology as well as in terms of business administration. So we are trying to inculcate those content within the coursework and provide some kind of initial thrust to the people who get into the industries, and that's slowly growing, and that makes it more evident as we go along in a long term. Whereas there are employers and vendors and service agents who are relying on the methodology because the practicing architects need something as a handhold as and when they are doing the actual work. So the professional body is providing those supports to these people. Government per se, there is a lot of interaction within both as a government, there are people coming from government agencies being members of ISA and telling us where the focus is on present policy, regulations, risk necessitating out of various industrial products and services, and what are the things that are essential, like security, internet security threat, or be it multimedia, be it media, device usage. Some of these things are coming out as regulations, and they take the ISA as one of the feet in terms of establishing policies and best practices. The themes, this is not limited to the 4 that I have put forth here. Basically in terms of design to provide value, we need to describe the architect's design and values, whereas it is a value-driven design means a lot in terms of agility of the framework. So there is a kind of balance that we have in terms of the theme. So if you have a steadfast design and provide value only for that particular design, it might not be an evangelist kind of an approach from the architect, knowing what may happen in agility in business or in other areas. So architects design to describe the value, to meet the expectation, is one of the themes rather than actually providing a specific value to the design. And definitely we feel that architecture is a technology value and is definitely not in terms of a delivery. Of course, they go hand in hand in terms of what you deliver must be meaningful to the end user. So obviously they are interchanged. However, the impetus of architecture is in terms of a technology value that goes into the design. And in the past, maybe 5 years back or even today, many organizations do not recognize architecture as a job, unlike in civil engineering or structures, wherein people understood, though of course it was relatively late, that conceptualization and design is more important than actually driving a project and doing it on a piece-by-piece basis, let's say tomorrow kind of an approach. So today, if you look at software architecture, you find that many organizations do not recognize completely it as a profession, and it's not just a job of coming in and looking at it and providing some meaningful answers at that point of time and then vanishing. So architecture is a profession, which is one of the themes that I would like to take forward. And last but not the least is about the engagement with the business. A good business must have a support or enablement from technology strategy. So to do that, one has to understand business, be able to leverage all the technology features to the business support. So obviously, some of these four themes are not restricting to these four, but this is some of the things that I found very meaningful to discuss with you. And one of the last bullets that are there, the good technology strategies about how architects engage with business. Today's second part of the seminar means a lot, because to do that you need to really understand what business is, at least at a very high level, to be able to visualize one's role as an architect in engaging with business, making sure that the business values are delivered. So a bit of history into the ISA as well as architecture as well. I think long back, I think that was one of the first IEEE definitions, and then we came out with the Diksha popularizing the term, and then coming out with Prana's publishing an article on architecture of software. That was in 1972. Imagine, about 42 years back, and that was the time that object orientation came into being. And that was primarily in the theoretical stage at that point of time, primarily be driven by the universities. And one of the first hearing of the user interface architecture was in 1975. And we may recall, as most of us being here for a couple of years or more, a decade or so, user interface was one thing that was a design and concept challenge. How can a user be made more comfortable? Today you have user-centric approach, ease of use, and such of those characters. But user interface architecture had it defined as character in 1975 itself. Then of course came the much referred Zachman framework, which is even today quite strong in terms of being adopted in many of the architectural designs and concepts. And further on, the TOGAF, and in 2002, the IT architect professional body was formed as ISA. To activate in 2004, ISA introduced 250 IT skill sets library. Today, it is more than double that. The skill sets are useful for a practicing architect. It can be a business, it can be information, it can be infrastructure. Their skill sets grow as members contribute to them. So it is from a practicing side, from the industry which comes into the ISA and goes together. I'll tell you a little bit more about it as we go further in the 5 pillars of ISA. And one of the best things that would happen, a reference book, which was an IT architect body of knowledge, was introduced by ISA. Now this ITA book was based definitely on the 5 pillars that ISA recognized, which we will discuss in the next couple of slides or so, after we completely finish with the bit of history that we have here. And we have version 2.0 today running, and we are under a revision, including some of the case studies, the tool sets. There has been a lot of progress in terms of available tools, a lot of progress in terms of successful case studies, and also not so successful, so that the referencing is being changed in the version 2.0, along with a way of bringing in fresh brains from the universities, the freshers from universities in contributing in terms of what architecture can help us. So this is a kind of a single slider which gives you some more information in terms of when, what was uh, what was referenced and published. The slide deck as well as the recording will be available to you on the website, so don't need to worry about the notes of this. So going forward, I think we will spend a little bit more time in terms of 5 pillars of IT architecture. I'll just give you a 1-minute break here. Okay. So speaking about the 5 pillars of IT architecture, it's more of a foundation which the ISA approach framework follows. And mind you, irrespective of Zachman, TOGAF, DODF, the ISA is a methodology to implement multiple frameworks. And you may choose some of the best of those features and apply this methodology. But most of these methodologies that we are speaking today have these 5 components, which are very important in terms of how one wants to be an architect. Am I an architect? How can I best interact with IT architects, and how can I execute on my personal growth? As one of the main criteria which will give you a more awareness as an architect as to what you need to do and which are those areas where you need to grow. Because as per the ISA methodology that we have, these 5 pillars constitute more than 90% of the needs and necessity of a practicing architect. So if you look at the what ISA is today, in terms of what I spoke to you a couple of minutes back, it has, beyond the founders, we have distinguished people who are in the Board of Education. So the Board of Education consists of these distinguished fellows, and it's also a kind of moving crowd which will have some dedicated core teams in the areas like, for example, media, for example, in terms of new devices, internet teams, in terms of specific infrastructural progress, cloud computing, big data. So there will be certain core teams. Beyond that, there is a Board of Education which actually matures the content out of these technical experts and the business evangelists and help the members themselves to achieve higher degree of competence. And the delivery mechanism is through chapters and events. So you have events regularly happening across chapters where you keep sharing one's and everybody's practice and their knowledge and their experience. And the specific point of time, we also look at summating them together and then looking at how well it can restructure our methodology. So it's a continuing process wherein we keep improving, and that's what has been happening in the past decade, when all these people have contributed, and we are at a place where we can say, how did we do our work? So the first was more in terms of the qualitative analysis. We looked at focus groups from top industry architects to provide information as to what is necessary for architecture methodologies. Then we have a quantitative analysis of how do we practice them? How do we actually look at making sure that the different frameworks and the meaningful objectives that they bring together really help us in achieving what we want? And last but not the least is also in terms of the asset creation. So while we were doing this survey and interaction with focus groups from top industry, there was an asset creation which created case studies, approach, methodology that can be sequentiated, and created a kind of a library for the worldwide community of architects in terms of what kind of current state we are in, what might be the future state, what are the standard definitions, and based on that, how to go ahead and then meet the final objective of a business need or a technology strategy. That's all being filtered and put in ITABOC. And that's what ITABOC consists of, which is the foundation of all information collectively provided by different groups, surveyed through members who are practicing architects, and an asset created to depict those notions, approaches, their frameworks, their methodologies all together in deriving a architectural methodology. And that's written in IT architecture body of knowledge. That's a book which comes as, I think most of you who are members would have seen that book, and it's very useful in terms of a startup, a single common vocabulary across architecture, how to approach any architectural role. Now, the 5 pillars, coming to the core definition of what the 5 pillars are. If you look at it, we are in an IT environment and we are very comfortable about it as to with a project manager, we have these software setups, we have the infrastructure, we have the data around, and then we all do the design. Yes, the IT and the design we are very conscious about. And of late in the last 10-15 years, there has been focused approach through SEI/CMM and Sigma 6 in terms of quality attributes as to how to ensure that whatever we deliver is good enough for the business need. Now, the other 2 pillars are very important. One is in terms of orientation of technology to business as a strategy, the BTS. The second, which is definitely the human dynamics. It includes politics as well. It includes how your people environment is. It depends upon how the skill sets of individuals are. What are their perceptions, points of views, different notions? How do we handle that in terms of conceptualizing, designing, and implementing an architectural need for a business? So the last 2 which I mentioned, of the 5 pillars, the focus is on aligning the technology to the business strategy and looking at human dynamics apart from the normal motions in terms of IT environment, quality attributes, and design. Now if you look at it, they might be at different levels. The thing that I have depicted here is like ideal. Everybody knows about everything else as a EA role or an architect role. It may not most happen that way. Some people might be very little knowledge in terms of business technology strategy, but excellent in terms of IT environment and design. The others might be extremely good in quality attributes, but do not know anything about the IT environment. There are others who are very poor in handling people relationship, human dynamics, understanding situations, but they are very good in understanding what the design is. And there are a lot of people who really do not understand what a business for which I am doing the technological work. So these 5 pillars are very, very effective in terms of ensuring that everybody understands, at least in different levels, to meet the strategic objective. So IT architecture is just not design and technology. It is more than that, and it has got a multiple skill matrix, and I'll tell you how this got oriented with that of Microsoft now. Because in 2006, what Microsoft decided was to adopt to the ISA approach for the ISA methodology for certifications. Why is that? Why is that So simply said and done and quit. The foundation 5 pillars that we discussed today in the last couple of minutes actually support various specializations. There might be questions in terms of where the technology architecture is, but I think it's technology. Technology comes in terms of a perception of ensuring that you have varying amounts of combinations of information, infrastructure, and software. Information logically being presented over an infrastructure and through a technology. So technology architecture, according to me, is consuming most of these three specializations. Of course, predominantly in terms of a specific, let me say, standard. Say, for example, Microsoft.NET or J2E or the mainframe KICS orientation. So these are some of the specialization, and of late I cannot not talk about the iOS and the Androids. So that depending upon the infrastructure very much and a kind of information, it can be just as structured information or unstructured information, or it's a moving cache information, and the software predominantly in terms of organizing levels of logic to achieve the business objective defined by the business architecture. So these are the different specializations, and the role of enterprise architecture is in different levels attributed to this. It's the width of the specialization, may not be the depth of it. So that's how the skill matrix look at. And if you look at the Microsoft's original 7 competences, we have the leadership, the communication, or the strategy which goes towards BTS. Then we have process and tactics which go into the design. We have technology, breadth, depth, and organizational dynamics going into the IT environment. So most of these things have a match between what original 7 competences of Microsoft are with the foundation body of knowledge. And that's how we are trying to map towards an ISA methodology which covers the 5 pillars. So our focus today will be a little bit more in terms of the skill matrix, though I do have a limitation in terms of the time. I will try to go a little bit faster and drive you through these 5 pillars. You can actually Google on YouTube and you will find 5 pillars of ISA, which is readily available and being presented by some of the world's best propagators of these 5 core columns, as they call it, on which the whole architecture, design, conceptualization is dependent on. But before we go in a little bit more further, this might be a little tough screen for you, but it defines in terms of what is architecture. Okay, there are multiple definitions that exist. So if you look at architecture, one of the things that I can tell you is it's different from that of engineering. Because there is nothing which is very specific, quantitative about it. It's not as engineering science. It is not a fact. It's more of an ambiguity. It's an art. It is more of concept. It is looking at the method, the style of. It might be innovative. It encompasses some of these terms which are very ambiguous. I can say, I got a new architecture with a different design. Now, this design needs a whole set of equations, logics for implementing. So how successful is an architectural concept or a design is definitely relying on how best you can actually practice it and bring it on implementation line. So not all architectural concepts are very successful, and those which are termed successful have to be oriented towards a specific strategy and need. So these are 2 very important things that we should remember when we actually look at the definition of an IT architecture. Many organizations, including those of universities, have given certain specific para, as you see here, like MIT, saying that organizing logic for business process and infrastructure, reflecting the integration and standardization It's much beyond that, according to me. It's much beyond of just organizing logic. It's much beyond, it starts much before that organizing logic. What kind of a logic needs to come? What is the need? And then on the other side of it, standardization requirements of the firm's operating model. The governance factors, the regulations keep changing. So enterprise architecture from the beginning of concept till the end of governance is what is more in terms of a defined business, organization and its strategy. So if you can want to define a boundary for an enterprise architect, at that point of time it is definitely the specific business objectives of the organization. And that's where it starts. Because if you say, I'm doing an architecture for customer relationship management, how does that really figure when the organization is focusing more in terms of expanding the product bandwidth to meet with any kind of customer in the global market? So you should be conscious in terms of the product and the customer, how they are related, how they are agile, how they map, and that's the core architect that we do. Software architecture more is in terms of what we know, is in terms of logic, in terms of programming, bringing information and data to a specific level for us to operate upon and bring certain analytical life into the system. So I think most of you will have different definitions and different exposure depending upon the experiences that you have. To sum it up, ISA's definition is more in terms of art, of designing and delivering valuable technology strategies. And of course, I can say that it's also a science in terms of the way we can implement it. Capability to implement comes from the science, ability of it to map. An art of designing maps with a lot of science of delivery. And that's what the ISA's definition is about. Definitely, as we spoke a little bit earlier in terms of IT architecture as a profession, it's more similar to that of what an architect in engineering does or a doctor does in medicine. And it does require considerable training and specialized study. Today, we are not finding much of these they're all available in silos and we are unable to actually map it to that of practicing requirements. So if you look at the available frameworks and available methodologies, they are innumerable. The way they are implemented with varying environments, different technologies. Say for example, we have Microsoft software, we have IBM OSs, and we have multitudes of software vendors like SAP or Oracle coming in with their applications. Now, who is architecting what? How are we building product architecture of a software product architecture into your organizational architecture? Which is more important? Is your organizational architecture more important, or the fitment, right fitment of the available packages to the architecture required for your organization is important? So these are some of the things that make you or break you as an IT architect. Some of the things that I can just showcase you here is that, are you modeling it from an IT perspective? Or are you a person who thinks quick and iterative process for creating a code? I mean, this is some of the specific roles and skills. Person that does advanced engineering and design so that you will get technology-enabled support for a business. Selects the projects, frameworks and products so that you are able to actually map the available requirements and look at delivery schedule. Or you're looking at the right services and providers for all the things that you're doing today for the need of the business in your organization. So it might be a combination of all. And sometimes it might be one or two of it depending upon the kind of exposure or the role definition by the organization is. ISA defines it as a technology strategist for the business. So when you go in as an architect, you are actually strategizing the technology for the need of the business. And that's very important. So the question goes into most of our mind is in terms of, are you an IT architect? Do we have all the skills? Do we want to get into that role? How do we really relate that with our day-to-day work, how do we actually bring a taxonomy of information available or the components that are available to build not only a specific concept but also ensure that it is able to be designed. So, and where do we actually do the deployment of our architect? Is it in across the length and width of the enterprise, or is it specific to some of the areas? So some of the slides that I'm running through indicate that there are specific roles available in terms of architect to be a part and parcel of ensuring success to translate the technology capability for the business need. So that's how the enterprise deployment looks today. While adopting to the body of knowledge, ISA actually started doing this training way back in 2009, and the course that I'm actually kicking off in India, the Architect Core, is one of that. That is the primary course that is being run in December as an Architect Core, which will have more in-depth description, and your competency improves in terms of these 5 pillars as to how effectively it will help you in your practice, whether you're just a solution architect or be it a technology evangelist or just a information architect working in the data warehouse. How does these pillars help you in terms of achieving better width of the knowledge to be an architect, to conceive and conceptualize and be able to do a better design? So just running through some of the business technology strategy skills, mainly if you look at it has to focus in terms of giving a competitive edge to the company, meeting its business need. Where the revenue comes in or whatever they feel as a strategy, they want to increase the number of customers, they want to improve the core areas of their businesses, and how do they basically compete with a specific business identifiers. I'm a retail merchant. I would like to compete in that area. How does that organization fit into it? How does the technology align with the business goals when you are choosing, let's say, we have Microsoft desktops for client ends in all the retail shops, and we have, let us say, servers, Blade servers or Unix running the application in the backend in the data center. Now, how do you arrive at that? How do you align those technology choices? Or will you go for a mainframe because high volumes of data are being processed? How do you arrive at that? So when I'm making the statement like high volumes of data, they are actually about the business that we do. So unless we know we are going to treat 1 million customers in day one, you will not be able to choose your technology framework for it. So obviously the business goals need to be met with your technology alignment. And you must know a bit of that particular, when you are working to a retail agent or a high-tech consumer, you should be able to understand that business. Then only you will be able to provide a good concept and a design. So going a little bit faster on that, I think most important is also in terms of when you select a technology strategy, you should also keep in terms in your mind ability of your solution to be a best cost-effective, high-performance, and market-recognized approach. Say, for example, you come out with a theme, and the design concept of fantastic, it maps the business to, and you raise a, let us say, you have a proposal to be met by the vendors, you open a RFI, response from the vendors come in, and none of them have the kind of a package which actually meets your design and criteria. What will you do? Homegrown systems? Will you take those amount of risk and time to achieve it? So you will have to have the conscious knowledge of the packages around, the products around in the market, which can give you the best breed of the business need with customization as needed. So that's what I stated just now is an approach which will reduce the investment, improve the performance, time to market. So these are some of the considerations that you need to also take while defining a technology strategy for the business. I just cannot be a partial and say, well, in a similar high-tech industry, I had implemented a mainframe solution and it should be working in your company as well. No, I don't think I can go and make the statement even after studying all the business requirements. It varies. It depends on the environment, it depends on the geography, it depends upon the logic, the focus of the business imperatives, and definitely the cost, overall cost, and how do you operate it. So, going further, I think we have the IT environment, which I don't think I need to discuss much because most of us are aware in terms of the skills and the things that we run in maintenance and how do we do the re-engineering and forward engineering. So I think to a large extent this is one of the pillars that most people are very familiar with. And they are, I think day in and day out, we spend a lot of time in understanding the methodologies and technologies currently in use, what is involved, and how the new things are coming in, be it DevOps, be it big data, be it anything, and how the IT environment works through. However, you need to have, as I spoke a couple of minutes earlier, in terms of, in your concept, you should be able to have a balance between how much you want to build specific to your company and how much you want to just buy off the shelf and implement it. Remember, if you want to buy off the shelf and implement it, your business may need to change their processes to adapt to the process of what you buy. And that's the gap between the build and the buy, and that's the balance. And if you look at it, co-banking industry, banking and financial industries, in which I am living for quite some time now, not less than 60% customization of any package is being done for specific bankings. Similarly, in automotives, SAP or Oracle go through tremendous amount of customizations. So what you buy, you must map it with the process. There might be a big gap between the market, what it is providing, with that of what the industry needs it, the software market and the industry. And I think of late there has been a tremendous growth in that direction, definite rapport between the groups, definitive interactions between adopting to technology, which is helping the architects. But you should be very conscious in terms of how you implement the project and how do you actually go with interoperating multiple different systems, because I'm talking as an architect across the width of the enterprise, not specific to just one domain. So the IT environment definitely will have to live with the interoperabilities between multiple technologies or multiple frameworks, and that will be very meaningful if your concept is very much balanced in that respect. Now the quality attributes that we have been sidelining for some time, I was like, I do not know, I am only defining what is needed conceptually in design. How you achieve it and how do you maintain the quality of it is none of my concern. It depends upon the individual implementation team. No, I don't think an architect can walk away that way. One should qualify in terms of the architectural concern for a system, that this system cannot be useful unless and until it meets a performance objective of 2 seconds response time, or it can be as simple as it should be able to gather information from multiple sources within a stipulated SLA, or with no limits concerned for a query, it should be able to ensure that it is the correct data that it is building, that is data governance. So there are quality attributes that are taken as somebody else's job and not an architect's job today. But unfortunately, those who define the system as an architect fail to actually define it at the first time, so that it becomes an operational problem issue for the management in terms of, hey, I'm not finding this solution effective because there is data governance issues, because it is taking data from multiple area domains. Number 2, it is taking too long to do that, and it's really not helpful in my customer facing job. Now that should have been a character defined at the time that you defined your architectural concept and your design. So it definitely encompasses usage, development, operations, and security as four major quality attributes across all IT architectural concerns. And these are, of course, most of us will call it as usability and security and things like that. So the time, cost, and requirement of the resource constraints and can become a trade-off in applying quality attributes, which should be a concern at the time when you started your concept or design itself. Whether I am designing something for 5 nines or for 2 nines, that's very important at the point of, will a 2 9 help you at this point of time? What will be the SLAs? So these are the things that are very important across. You can refer to this document much probably later in terms of how all the LEDs will be matched for specific development, usability, and operations. It is more of what hurts than being neutral or helps. If it hurts in operation, then I think it's a no-go. Because looking at the complexity of operations today, it's because people did not count what hurt in the quality attributes that today we have so many systems which are really taking the blood out of the body. I think I'll rush through the design because I think I'm running out of time. But I think I should have focused on the human dynamics. You know, in a couple of other presentations that I have shared with some of the members, integrated collaborative environment encompasses the ice, breaking the ice, the concept of human dynamics with skills associated in people, projects, processes, their interrelationship in the IT is a very important concern today. Many people have different notions about how they can operate, points of view about it, how you can handle a person coming and saying off the hook, like, look, what you're doing is not correct. Now how do you face it? Or how will you convince? Do you need to convince? Are you focused? How are you relating yourself with the customers? How are you managing your culture? How will you present things? How do you communicate? How do you collaborate and negotiate with people? You might be perfectly correct in your approach, but if the other person does not understand, how do you actually make sure that the other gets the communication across? It might be in China, it can be in India, it can be in US, it can be Europe. Cultures are different. So you must understand the way you can actually drive these attributes. So today we are finding very big issues in terms of those technology peers who have come up that are senior management and they really do not know how to manage human dynamics. They really do not know how to collaborate, how do you negotiate. So there has been a lot of side training programs that are happening either in an organization or in public to improve the human dynamics. That is the way you are able to collaborate, how effectively you can communicate, how you can actually sell a point, ensure that you are well heard. You might be wrong or right, but you need to communicate to the extent that the other person understands it. So you should be able to be qualified in terms of that. So having said that, I think I have completed the second, I think it's the first portion itself. I took a little bit longer than normal. And the other presentation that I had kept for is in terms of understanding the business. I'll just give you a 1 minute break. Maybe we can have a minute break here. Really running out of time. Please indicate if you are unable to continue. I would like to extend the session by another 10-15 minutes. If that is fine with you, just let's have 1 or 2 minutes break now. Thank you. In the meantime, you can actually post some of the questions. I don't see any questions coming on the screen. Okay, I think we do have a shortage of time, so I want to rush through the cutting edge paradigm. However, I will try to arrange one more session next week or in next 15 days time wherein we can go a little bit detail on this particular slide deck. You must give me a you must basically excuse me for skipping initial slides which I am browsing through now in the next 1 minute, which basically give us a need why we do need to talk about this. Why should we actually talk about understanding business? How should we take forward our way of working in the future? Some of the apprehensions I observed myself from my experience about technology professions, about enterprise architecture, about the business architects as well, about the employees and the employers in the organization, about what we actually hyped on, and also in terms of strategy. How much of this strategy do we do? Any successful company will have definitely a strategy which will be there. However, it's not visible to the architectural role. Is it mandatory? If they are doing well, why do we need new architects? They can be as well handle it, and they come from the internal organization as well. Maybe they also take help from people like KPMG or Accenture and Forrester, Gartner in terms of both business and technology. Are they enterprise architects as well? How do they actually help the technology architects perform? So if you look at all that, we feel we need to understand some of the things like what is in business, its imperatives, the major factors of fighting on business to make sure it is profitable and competitive, benefits of strategy, and also look at how the human dynamics, the integrated collaborative environment can work, and how do we appreciate having architecting transformations with business. You know, like today if you say I'm going to adopt to a new customer-centric approach, what impact does it really have in terms of your software applications and infrastructure? And how do you actually manage them? How operational needs get simplified? Okay, and do we have to bring together an awareness? Go to the organization and say, look, I'm very important because I do this. Then definitely we need to introspect and say how we are going to provide it, what value we do provide to the business and the organization, and what are the methods to achieve the skill and expertise. There are many of those things available today in the market, but very limited in terms of its width. And some are very deep-rooted trainings like UML or object-oriented technology or business domain modeling. But does it provide the width for us to be able to comprehend that there are so many other elements when we are conceptualizing and designing an architectural approach? So that's what my 4-part presentation is, and one of that is the business cutting edge paradigm, which basically depicts a scissor. Now if you look at the scissor, all of you must have definitely used the scissor. You cut a thread or you cut a paper or cloth with it. So obviously when you visualize that, how can this be an analogy to understand an overview of its overall business, be high-tech, manufacturing, or how to understand the impact factors of IT on business? And that's what I want to share with you in the next couple of slides. So you need to maybe perceive or imagine yourself having a scissor. In the live sessions, I always carry a scissor to depict this. Scissors have multiple different dimensional movements as well. So I'll be talking a little bit on this particular thing for the next five minutes. Now if you look at a scissor, it has got 2 levers. And the 2 levers are controlled by is moving on a fulcrum and definitely controlled by the loop. Now if you need to cut anything, the levers need to meet and move much beyond that, not just meet but cross each other for an effective cut. Many times what we do, We don't actually do that. We just use the edge. As I'm doing a mouse over, we use this particular edge to cut the saddle. Or maybe if it is a little bit stronger, we put pressure on these two so that it gets cut. Now, if we want to do this, the stress is primarily on the fulcrum here. And the pressure is coming from the two loops which are holding the lever. That's how the scissor works. Now if you look at the analogy, consider one of the lever being customer. And that's being driven out of the economic market demands. That is a dimension by itself. The other lever you represent as the product portfolio that you have in your organization. And that is driven by either the financial or the material supply chain, or even a service. So depending upon the supply chain, you are defining your product lever. And on the other side of it, the economic and market dimensions define your customer. Now if you have to be successful, you have to ensure that the customer meets the product. So you need to catch, and you need to actually focus in terms of putting pressure on this fulcrum to operate well enough so that effectively all your products are met with customers. Now there are two other dimensions to it. One lever as a two-dimensional depiction, I'm able to only depict one product range, meeting a specific interested segment of customer towards the product. So you can definitely have multiple dimensions to it, multiple products lever having its own customer segments and its own economic dimensions as well as the supply chain management for the products. That is one side of depiction. The second part is you can keep the product lever or the customer lever at one fixed place, fixed angle, and only move. Let's look at Apple products. Very limited. They don't move the product lever much, but ensure that the customer comes to meet the product. Whereas, let us look at maybe other Android kind of devices. They change the product to meet a specific segment of customer. So the customer is quite constant. They are attacking a particular segment by varying their products. So who is having a need for change? The product change needs a lot of financial, material, service, supply chain changes as well. The product changes, very constantly done. But if you're doing one-off changes for the product, you don't need a change in your vendor supply chain. So obviously the variations are different in terms of the way a business operates. Now if you are looking at the third point that I wanted to say is that you can have a thick portfolio of products, a very thick product lever, and you have a very thin line of customer. Now that depicts actually not much profitability. Whereas for a thin strand, I'm talking about two extremes. A thin strand of product portfolio, like in iOS, having the same range of customers, millions of them, a thick lever of customer meeting that product, is I think a very profitable business because you don't need to change much of your supply chain. You need to manage subtle differences. That's the business strategy. What business-focused product services from the enterprise are defined and how are they supported from the financial and material supply chain. While the product lever is completely an internal control, a business strategy by your organization, the agile customer experience on value style, lifestyle, or a product utilization leverage level on the customer side of the lever is completely external control for the organization. So any change there is a reactive response coming out of the organization. Unless they have evangelized, they are able to strategize and then be ready for a change in the customer segment. And that's why most of the organizations today across verticals, I'm not talking about limited to financial market, telecommunication market or high tech or manufacturing, I'm talking across, the same thing holds good. So it's a very simple analogy for a technical specialist to understand a scissor and make sure one's life is less miserable than what it is today while doing the work. Now, if you look at the loops, the supply chain is all about vendor relationship, economic profiles, the products is about product agility and focus, whereas the customer one is more in terms of the customer relationship, demography, segmentation definition, market strategy initiative, geographical presence. But beside all that, what needs to be done is to reduce your gap and the sad mismatch. What does it mean? You must have effective governance processes and supply and demand mismatch reduced so that these two loops can bring together the lever together. And it's again on the fulcrum here. Keep looking at that fulcrum. I'll tell you what is the role of that fulcrum there and what we are looking at today as role definition. Now, on the product side of it, it can be proactive as I mentioned, but on the customer side of it, because of regulatory and market dimensions, it's quite reactive coming from the organization. Now the process modeling is across most of this. Vendor process definition, customer relationship, product definition, market process modeling. The process goes across all the four segments here that as I am representing. Customer, product, market and supply chain. While the domain modeling is specific to that of your supply chain and your product. So when you say supply chain and your product, we definitely have some of the customer and this overlap is intended. So you don't need to actually domain model the gap and the mismatch. You basically need to domain model the product area, the market area, the supply chain area, the vendors and the customers. And if you have a governance process and an effective supply and demand process, I think you have a very good architectural design. That's what I wanted to depict here using a scissor. Of course, you can have three-dimensional perception of this. You can actually look at multitudes of overlaps like what I mentioned earlier. One lever stronger than the other. It can be one fixed and the other moving. And it can be multiple scissors running on the same fulcrum. Now, this is what I wanted to say. All along, whatever I was mentioning about the fulcrum, that is where the strategy is. The complete pressure of a financial or a material supply chain or a market coming together is applied through this particular fulcrum to ensure that the customer meets the product. And and it is of course assumed that once the customer meets the product, you are profitable. So what does it really indicate? The present, what I have depicted scissor, which is open scissor, which is not cutting anything, shows that it's not doing its job, obviously. That means there is a low business process effectiveness index, there's lower corporate governance effectiveness, the business focus to improve domain definitions, regulatory and governance failures are very important here to reduce this, and technology focus should be there in providing and enabling support for the business. On the other side of it, the third portion is the management focus to meet supply and demand. Unless they put pressure on the supply chain mechanism and understand the market dimensions through the either what you call as market risk or credit risk or whatever, you will not be able to put the pressure on the performance of the customer meeting the product. So the three things, technology, management and business, they are very important, but all the three rest on the fulcrum of enterprise architects and a strategy focus. Now let's look at the very effective picture of a scissor cutting. That means we don't have a governance gap, we don't have a supply and demand mismatch, we have an effective business process index, we have business focus on effective domain modeling, and we have technology focus which has improved the process excellence, and management has got a better profit and loss. This is a competitive organization. So I'm trying to depict using a scissor as an analogy to this cutting edge paradigm to make you guys understand. It's very simple for technologists to understand what is business. It's across verticals. So I would look forward to some of your responses either in person to me emails or in the forums or as a response. Some questions you might be having, you can shoot at me. But ultimately, what is needed based on that analogy is these 4 bullets. You must have an approach and methodology for business strategy, which is very important. Shall we do strategic planning? I think it's very important. To improve the supply and demand alignment and the product utilization, agile customer, we must go for domain modeling. We must have tools to do the domain modeling. We must be effectively doing it for the business benefits. And as technology strategists, we should be able to do a logical process modeling which will reduce the governance gap. Effective and best logical process will have least impact, least need for a governance. If your logic is able, let's look at, I think I'll elaborate a little bit more on this. Way back in our country, we had manual processes. There was no logic, right? It was depending upon the person who actually does the work. His logic he used to put, he used to qualify you or not qualify for your insurance. He will definitely would have quoted more because you look very competent to pay in buying a car, or you go and buy a mobile, he will be able to fool you. Now, these things are much eliminated to some extent because there is software which is automated, which has a logic. So the technology strategy will keep reducing this logical process gap. But for that we need to have process modeling. And to have all these 3 under control and to ensure there is operation for supporting and sustaining and as well as succeed in an environment, integrated collaborative environment, ICE, you must adopt an enterprise architecture methodologies. Methodologies may have different frameworks. You may adopt Zachman, you can go to TOGAF for something, you want to do your own. We don't care. As long as you have a method which can answer these questions. So I thought a method with these 5 pillars, understanding of business, should be good enough starter for a architect. To go and start tomorrow, I may just run and get into a manufacturing industry and say, I'm supposed to be the enterprise architect there. Now, I have done my work in a bank a couple of months back. Is it the same? Should I have to change? Or even if I'm doing for a different bank, is it the same? So the human dynamics, the quality, the IT environment, they all change. The design might be the same, and definitely the business technology strategy will be totally different. It might speak about customer, it may speak about product as I spoke to you in terms of this analogy of the cutting edge scissors, but they are different focus. Just to give you an example, in telecommunication, when I had an exposure a couple of years back, the prepaid customer is totally different. The business strategy is to treat the prepaid customer differently from that of a postpaid customer. It might be different with different companies, BSNL or be it Idea, be it any other Bharati, any of them, their approach is different for two segments. And why do they do that? That's their business strategy. Now we need to understand that when we go with our software package, our architectural design, our concepts, our way of implementing, our way of analyzing information. Now that's what is architecting. And I think to help in all that, we have a lot of available packages, available training programs, but to tell you the least, none of them tell you what is to be done, how we should go about implementing it. So there are a couple of things that you can go through in this slide deck that I'll be sharing with all of you, and these are all some of the things that will make you a better architect coming forward with the foundation that I spoke with you. One of the foremost thing is that please keep attending these webinars which are happening every other week, either on a Tuesday or on a Thursday. You can run through this on the YouTube. They will be uploaded within a day or so that you get better mileage understanding of it. Try to get yourself exposed to certification and training on a one-on-one. The first of that is in December, which will be done by Paul. You can definitely look at a very helpful ISA experience as you do your works. Be it a promising architect looking at next 20 years of service, or be it a person who has done 20 years now but doesn't know what to do, they can definitely contribute to ISA. They can build up the ISA library. And there are certain memberships available. Some of you are already members, and these are the things which come free. The webinars and the knowledge share sessions come free for the full members. The basic free members will, I think by end of November, we will stop giving them benefits of just a knowledge share unless they become full members. So I think we should look at getting the best benefits out of ISA, not just in getting a certificate. I'm a CETA certified. No, I'm not looking at that. I'm looking at after a month or two, somebody gets back to us and say, look, I could do my work much better. And the exposure that I had with the global corporate peers was fantastic. So you have libraries of components, you have content repository, you have local chapter activities, you have virtual communities like ours, what we are doing today, which ISA really is good at and has done it in the last 10-12 years across Europe and US. Started recently in Australia, but I've been associated with them since 2011 in Asia Pacific when I was in Kuala Lumpur, and it's been fantastic. The awareness of architecture is there because of their participation. Their awareness improves with reference to sharing experiences, case studies, the ability with you can do the work. For example, the Lucid Chart account. What does a Lucid Chart account actually give? It gives you components, it gives you library, and you can directly take it and use it in your implementation tomorrow in your customer place. And it's not dependent upon your organization, it's a professional value for you. And it hardly needs a sale from me once you have a look at it. So I think above all, keep your eyes open and let us look at more and more interactions in the next 4 to 6 weeks, wherein there are multiple themes. I will give you links to other webinars which has been completed where you missed out, and you should be able to pick up those community delivery concepts very much from ISA. And not only that, you can be a part of the presentation. If you have a theme, you have something to share with us, we are open for it. Please feel free and let me know. You can send email at vjere@isahome.org. I have sent you emails across for this webinar. Please do come open, be a part of it. I think we have about 4 or 5 of you who are within the group today attending, who have given some of this delivery to make ISA much better. And you have local chapter activities which are available, which goes across the global availability. Say for example, yesterday, I think at the same point of time there is a 5-pillar presentation going on in Europe. And that presentation will be made available to you in about a day. And you should be able to see that 5-pillar as well as correlate with what you thought today it is. So give me a feedback. I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and I'm sorry I took half an hour more of your time, but I felt I think it was worth its while. The more of the details of this, you can actually visit multiple sites. You just have to go to isaglobal.org and then you'll find a lot of events, lot of library of knowledge shares that are available for you. YouTube, where you can Google ISA and you will find a lot of presentations available. I will try to post those things as blogs in ISA India chapter website. Please do visit and make sure that you are there in the next presentation, which will be not more than 15 days from now, which will be continuation of my part 2 after this cutting edge paradigm. I will give a 5-minute break here so that you can actually pour your questions if you need. I can answer them and then we will conclude the session. Thank you so much for your patience to be their part.